For over 3 centuries, the Tang Dynasty stood as one of the greatest civilizations the world had ever seen. An empire of power, beauty, and extraordinary cultural brilliance. At its height, Tang China was the most cosmopolitan place on earth. Caravans from Persia, merchants from Arabia, scholars from India, and musicians from Central Asia flocked to the grand capital of Chang'an, a city so vast and vibrant that ancient travelers called it the center of the world. This was an age where emperors ruled with confidence, poets shaped the soul of the nation, and the Silk Road connected China to the far edges of Europe and Africa. Technology advanced, cities expanded, and art reached a level of refinement unmatched in its time. Yet, behind the glory were battles for power, political ambition, and the rise and fall of legendary figures. Leaders whose decisions shaped not only China, but the future of Asia itself. The Tang Dynasty was not just a chapter in history. It was a golden age, a time when China opened its doors to the world, embraced new ideas, and forged a legacy that still echoes across continents today. The rise of the Tang Dynasty. When the Sui dynasty collapsed under the weight of massive construction projects, failed military campaigns, and widespread rebellion, China descended into chaos. Provinces broke apart. Warlords rose from every corner, and for a moment, it seemed as though the unity of the empire would vanish forever. But from this turbulence emerged a powerful family, the House of Li. Li Yuan, a seasoned general of noble heritage, saw opportunity where others saw only ruin. Together with his brilliant and fiercely ambitious son, Li Shimin, he launched a campaign to seize control of the crumbling empire. Their armies marched across the north, taking city after city, gathering scholars, soldiers, and common people who longed for stability. Yet the path to the throne was not quiet nor simple. Within the Li family itself, rivalry grew. To secure the future of the dynasty, Li Shimin confronted his own brothers in an event that would define the fate of China, the Xuanwu Gate incident. At dawn, within the palace gates, Li Shimin struck first, swift, decisive, and ruthless. When the dust settled, he emerged as the uncontested heir. Soon after, he ascended the throne as Emperor Taizong, one of the greatest rulers in Chinese history. With the internal conflict resolved, the new Tang Dynasty began its ascent. Under Taizong's leadership, China entered a period of military strength, cultural openness, and administrative reform that would shape the empire for centuries. The rise of the Tang was not just the founding of a new dynasty. It was the beginning of a golden age built on ambition, strategy, and the determination to restore order to a fractured world. Emperor Taizong and the Age of Reform. When Li Shimin ascended the throne as Emperor Taizong, he inherited a nation scarred by war, yet filled with potential. What followed was one of the most remarkable periods of political wisdom and statecraft in world history. Taizong governed with a philosophy that blended Confucian virtue, military discipline, and pragmatic reform. He listened to criticism, something rare for ancient monarchs, inviting ministers to speak openly even if their words challenged him. This atmosphere of honesty shaped a government admired for its stability and fairness. Under his rule, the bureaucratic system was refined into a highly efficient machine. The imperial examination system expanded, allowing talented individuals, regardless of birth, to rise through merit. Scholars, administrators, and strategists formed the backbone of an empire that prized intelligence as much as power. At the same time, Taizong strengthened the military into a formidable force. His campaign secured the empire's borders, pushing Tang influence deep into Central Asia. The empire controlled key segments of the Silk Road, ensuring wealth and foreign culture flowed into China like never before. Beyond the battlefield, Taizong understood the value of diplomacy. Envoys from Korea, Japan, Persia, Arabia, Tibet, and countless nomadic kingdoms traveled to Chang'an, presenting tribute and forming alliances. Chang'an became not just a capital, it became the diplomatic center of the Eastern world, where languages, religions, and technologies intertwined. Through reform, military strength, and international vision, Emperor Taizong transformed the Tang Dynasty into a superpower. His reign set the standard for what a golden age could be: wise governance, cultural openness, and an empire confident in its place on the world stage. Empress Wu Zetian. Power and controversy. In the long history of China, only one woman ever ruled as emperor, not as a consort, not as a regent, but as the sovereign herself. Her name was Wu Zetian, a figure both admired and feared, brilliant and ruthless, remembered as one of the most extraordinary rulers of the Tang era. Wu Zetian entered the palace as a concubine, but her intelligence, ambition, and political instinct quickly set her apart. Through decades of navigating court intrigue, building alliances, and eliminating threats, she rose to the pinnacle of power. In a world dominated entirely by men, she broke every boundary and claimed the throne, declaring the founding of her own Zhou dynasty within the Tang era. Her rule was marked not only by controversy, but by transformation. Wu Zetian reformed the imperial examination system, expanding opportunities for scholars from humble backgrounds. She promoted capable officials, strengthened central authority, and cracked down on corrupt aristocratic families who had long dominated Tang politics. Under her leadership, the empire remained stable, prosperous, and culturally vibrant. Yet, history also remembers her darker side. Court struggles grew bloody, rivals disappeared. Rumors, some exaggerated, some invented by later historians, painted her as a master of manipulation, a ruler who would stop at nothing to secure her power. Whether these accounts are truth or political slander, one thing is certain: Wu Zetian reshaped the political landscape in ways no other woman in Chinese history ever could. Her legacy endures as a paradox, a ruler who brought order and talent to the court, yet whose rise was forged through relentless ambition. To some, she was a visionary leader, to others, a usurper. But to history, she remains the only woman who ever sat on the dragon throne, a testament to the extraordinary complexities of power and the enduring impact of her reign. Yimisi for the cosmopolitan capital, Chang'an. At the height of the Tang Dynasty, Chang'an was not merely a capital, it was the beating heart of the ancient world. With nearly 1 million residents, it was the largest and most cosmopolitan city on Earth. A metropolis of grand avenues, towering gates, and bustling markets stretching further than the eye could see. Travelers from across Asia, the Middle East, and even distant Europe flocked to Chang'an. Persian merchants, Arab sailors, Indian monks, Korean scholars, Japanese diplomats, and Sogdian traders all walked its streets. Their languages blended into a vibrant soundscape. Their clothing, markets, and customs turned the city into a living mosaic of cultures. Religions flourished side by side. Buddhist temples rose like mountains of stone, filled with monks chanting scriptures from India. Taoist sanctuaries offered rituals rooted deep in Chinese tradition. Muslim communities built some of the earliest mosques in China, while followers of Zoroastrianism lit sacred flames that had traveled from Persia. Nestorian Christians, Central Asian shamans, and Manichaean priests all found a place in the vast spiritual landscape of the capital. And at the center of this cultural universe was daily life, colorful, energetic, and unmistakably modern in spirit. Night markets glowed with lantern lights as musicians performed melodies from distant kingdoms. Camel caravans entered from the western gates, carrying spices, gems, glassware, and stories from thousands of miles away. Street performers entertained crowds, while elite nobles paraded through the city in horse-drawn carriages adorned with silk. Women of the Tang Dynasty enjoyed freedoms rare for the ancient world, riding horses, playing polo, writing poetry, and participating in public life. Foreign fashions were embraced, international cuisine thrived, and art evolved through constant cultural exchange. Chang'an was more than a city. It was a global crossroads, a place where the Silk Road ended and the world began. Here, civilizations met, ideas collided, and the DNA of world culture was rewritten. Its legacy continues to define the imagination of ancient China, open, diverse, and alive with possibility. Poetry, culture, and the arts. The Tang Dynasty was more than a political powerhouse. It was a cultural explosion that reshaped all of East Asia. And at the heart of this golden age was poetry. This was the era of Li Bai, the romantic wanderer who wrote of moonlit nights, wine, and the beauty of existence. It was the age of Du Fu, the poet-historian who captured war, suffering, and the human heart with unmatched depth. And the time of Bai Juyi, whose simple, elegant verses made art accessible to everyone. Together, they didn't just write poems. They defined what poetry could be, But Tang brilliance didn't stop with the written word. Painting and sculpture flourished, blending realism with spiritual imagination. Court painters captured horses in mid-stride, heavenly maidens floating among clouds, and portraits so detailed they seemed alive. Meanwhile, calligraphy became more than handwriting. It became a supreme art form, a direct expression of the soul. The Tang capital, Chang'an, wasn't just a crossroads of trade. It was a crossroads of culture. Foreign instruments, from Central Asian lutes to Middle Eastern drums, filled the royal courts with new sounds. Dance traditions from Persia and India merged with Chinese styles, creating performances that dazzled emperors and commoners alike. And the influence of Tang culture spread far beyond China's borders. Japan's Nara and Heian eras, Korea's unified Silla, and Vietnam's early dynasties all absorbed Tang music, fashion, literature, architecture, and administrative systems. For centuries, to study culture was to study the Tang. This was a civilization confident in its identity, yet open to the world, a place where ideas collided, blended, and transformed into something extraordinary. A world where art wasn't just decoration, but the very heartbeat of an empire. The Silk Road and global connections. When we imagine the Tang Dynasty, we often think of emperors, poets, and palaces. But one of its greatest achievements stretched far beyond China's borders, the revival of the Silk Road, the most ambitious network of trade routes the ancient world had ever seen. During the Tang era, these routes reached their peak. Caravans traveled thousands of miles across deserts, mountains, and kingdoms, carrying treasures and ideas in every direction. Tang China became the beating heart of an interconnected world. From the west came Persian textiles, Arabian glassware, Indian spices, and even artifacts from the distant lands of the former Roman Empire. In return, China's silk, tea, ceramics, and metalwork traveled across continents, reaching markets and courts as far as the Mediterranean. What moved along the Silk Road wasn't just merchandise, it was imagination. Religions spread with the merchants. Buddhism from India, refined and transformed in China. Islam, carried by Arab traders who settled in thriving Tang cities. Even Zoroastrianism and Nestorian Christianity found a place in this cosmopolitan world. Science and knowledge traveled too. Astronomical ideas from Persia, medical texts from India, mathematics from the Islamic world, all of them enriched Chinese scholarship. In return, Chinese innovations like papermaking began their quiet journey westward, changing global history forever. The Silk Road made Tang China more than a regional empire. It made it a global crossroads, a place where merchants negotiated in dozens of languages, where scholars debated philosophies from different faiths, and where cultures met not through conquest, but through curiosity and exchange. This was globalization before the modern world knew the word. A network that stretched from East Asia to the Middle East, from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. And at its center stood the Tang Dynasty, shaping and being shaped by the world around it. Decline and fall of the Tang. Every golden age eventually faces its shadows. And for the Tang Dynasty, the darkness came suddenly and violently. In the mid-8th century, the empire confronted one of the most devastating uprisings in world history, the An Lushan Rebellion. What began as a revolt by a powerful frontier general erupted into a nationwide catastrophe. Cities burned, millions were displaced, and the once mighty Tang government was pushed to the brink of collapse. Even after the rebellion was crushed, the dynasty would never fully recover. The rebellion shattered China's confidence and drained its resources. But perhaps the greatest wound was political. The central government, once disciplined and efficient, began losing control over its vast territories. Regional military governors, the Jia-dushi, grew more independent, often acting as warlords rather than servants of the throne. Inside the palace, a new force emerged, the eunuchs. Originally servants, they soon commanded armies, influenced appointments, and even decided imperial successions. Their power struggles with scholar officials turned the court into a battlefield of corruption, manipulation, and intrigue. With the center weakened, the provinces spiraled into conflict. Local armies fought for dominance. Regions broke away, and the once vibrant empire fragmented piece by piece. The grandeur of Chang'an faded as trade routes declined. Cultural exchanges slowed, and the world's most cosmopolitan capital became a ghost of its former self. By the early 10th century, the Tang Dynasty, the empire that had defined an age of poetry, philosophy, wealth, and global connection, finally collapsed. It did not fall to one enemy, but to a long erosion of trust, unity, and order. Yet, even in its decline, the Tang left behind a legacy so vast that its influence continued for centuries. The poetry, art, and cosmopolitan spirit of the Tang still shape how the world imagines ancient China. A golden age may end, but its light never fully disappears. A golden legacy of China. The Tang Dynasty may have risen and fallen like all great empires, but its legacy endures as one of the brightest chapters in human history. It was an age of bold rulers, brilliant poets, fearless explorers, and a capital city that became the beating heart of the world. Along the Silk Road, ideas, religions, and innovations flowed in every direction, shaping civilizations far beyond China's borders. From the verses of Li Bai and Du Fu, to the grandeur of Chang'an, to the cultural footprints left across East Asia, the Tang Dynasty defined what it meant to be a global superpower long before the modern world existed. Its openness, creativity, and confidence continue to inspire scholars, artists, and storytellers today. The empire may have faded, but the golden light of the Tang still shines, a reminder of a time when China stood at the center of the world, leading an era of beauty, brilliance, and boundless possibility.